For what felt like decades, diesel estate cars were the go-to vehicle for families who wanted something relatively frugal with lots of space. But now times are changing, and this hybrid Toyota Corolla Touring Sports is looking to muscle in on that territory, and it stands a good chance of doing so. Toyota's ultra-economical estate gets low CO2 emissions, loads of equipment, and the Japanese manufacturer's excellent reliability record. We're putting it up against what has essentially become the very definition of an estate car, the Skoda Octavia Estate, with a 2-litre diesel engine. The Octavia Estate, just like the Superb Estate, shows Skoda at its best. A massive, practical car that's really good value. This is the 4th generation Octavia. It's new, it gets a sharper look, a plusher interior, and more driver tech than before. Save thousands of pounds on both through whatcar.com, but for now, let's start this comparison inside. Well, inside, up front, the Octavia has the upper hand here. It's got a really nice interior that feels plusher than the older model, and generally compared to the Corolla, everything feels a bit of a step forwards. There's a good mix of materials, although these buttons down here do feel a bit on the cheap side, but everything else, really nice, thick, dense materials, nice soft dash there, and this also is a little bit wobbly, but it's not that bad, and really generally it does feel more plush. It feels like a step forwards from the previous Octavia, and it also feels like a step on from what the Corolla offers too. I also like this 2-spoke steering wheel design that you have with the new Octavia, and a brilliant digital driver display. Nice big screen, graphics are really good, and there's loads of configurability to it as well, so you can decide very easily what you want to be looking at when. The shake-up inside of the new Octavia is very similar to the new Golf, and the infotainment system is virtually identical, which means they've got rid of the buttons. There's an 8.3-inch or 10-inch screen, and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto come as standard. The graphics are sharp, but the system is a bit laggy, and you know what we're going to say, more physical controls would make things much easier. Which is where the Corolla has a big advantage with all these buttons, but it's just a shame the actual system in the 8-inch touchscreen is so confusingly laid out. It's also quite slow to respond to touch inputs, and the graphics look ancient. These dials are really nicely damped though, and at least it comes with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. There's no getting away from the fact that in the Corolla, it does feel like a step down in quality compared to the Octavia. The materials are nice enough, they're squidgy up here, that's a little bit wobbly there, but it just doesn't have that feeling of plushness that you get in the Octavia. And even this leather around the steering wheel and the gear selector feels a bit plasticky compared to the stuff that you get in the Octavia. Over here, you get a couple of analog dials and then a screen in the middle, but the graphics on this screen are quite last gen. It doesn't really look cutting edge and crisp, and also the menus on it are a bit confusingly laid out too. You can tell that the Octavia has been designed with families in mind, and one of the giveaway signs is these massive door bins all around the car. So each one is wider and deeper than the ones that you get in the Corolla, and the storage generally in the Octavia is really good. Now there's loads of space up front, and in the back, both these cars are really, really impressive. And even if you're 6 foot or just under as I am, you'll have loads of room to stretch out in. Although in the back of the Octavia, you can see this is quite a big hump in the floor. So if you're sat in this middle seat, that could be annoying. But also you can see down here, 2 USB-C ports, and all around the Octavia, there's 5, whereas there's just 2 in the Corolla. And believe it or not, the Corolla also has fractionally better legroom as well. It really is surprisingly spacious back here. I mean, Skoda's and practicality, its reputation kind of goes hand in hand, doesn't it? But you might not necessarily think that with the Corolla, but it really is very practical in the back and comfortable. But the practicality scales quickly tip in favour of the Octavia when it comes to boots. Both cars get handy height adjustable boot floors, but the Octavias can be set much lower than the one in the Corolla. That's because Toyota has placed the batteries for the Corolla's hybrid system under the boot floor. And while the Corolla's boot is actually a nice square shape, it's not quite as wide nor as long as the Octavia's. We could squeeze 9 carry-on size suitcases in the Octavia's boot compared to 8 in the Corolla. As for the pricing, the Corolla is more expensive on a like-for-like basis than the Octavia Estate. But there's often really good deals around on both of these cars, just like the ones you can get on whatcar.com right now. The Corolla as well is expected to actually hold on to its value better than many other rivals over a few years. And that's one of the reasons why its PCP finance deals are very competitive indeed. But when it comes to fuel, that's where this hybrid versus diesel battle gets interesting. Interesting because we drove a controlled, mixed, real-world driving test route to get a fuel efficiency figure in both cars. And in this diesel Octavia, we got 57.7 miles per gallon, which is quite a bit more frugal than the 48.6 miles per gallon that we got in the hybrid Corolla. If you stick mainly to urban environments, then the Corolla will be particularly efficient. But on a mix of town, country roads and motorways, it's an easy win here for diesel. It's a closer match between these two cars when it comes to the pace on offer because there's very little to split them, but the way that they go about it is different. The Corolla has a continuously variable transmission, the CVT, so at low speeds around town it's smooth, it's quiet, where this diesel Octavia Estate does sound quite grumbly at those low speeds. But when you get on an open flowing road, then the diesel Octavia really comes into its own. And maximum torque's available from 1600 RPM, whereas in the Corolla, it's up at 4400 RPM. So you've really got to thrash that engine to get the best from it. And when you do, because it's got that single speed gearbox, it just sends the revs soaring when you want a big burst of acceleration. But it's only when you do need that sudden hit of acceleration where this whiny engine note and the CVT gearbox does get pretty annoying. If you're driving normally, or if you're on the motorway, then they're really refined, both cars. And they're difficult to split on ride quality as well. The Octavia is fractionally more comfortable on the motorway. It's got a softer suspension setup, so it just means it's a slightly better cruiser than the Corolla. But in this car, big road imperfections like potholes or expansion joints, the initial sting of impact is just softened and rounded off a little better in the Corolla than it is in the Octavia. And because of that slightly firmer suspension setup, the Corolla doesn't lean quite so much in the corners as the Octavia because that Skoda leans a lot. Corner, leaning, leaning like jelly, leaning. But still, if you meet a twisty bit of road, it's the Octavia that we'd rather be in. The Corolla doesn't lean as much, but the Octavia does have much better steering. It's sharper, it's more precise, the weighting's a bit nicer. You just feel a bit more distant from the experience. There genuinely are valid reasons for choosing either car, but this is one of those occasions where both have very different strengths. If you mostly do short journeys and you're looking to buy outright, then the Corolla Touring Sports, with its impressive low-speed fuel economy and Toyota's excellent reliability record, would make a great buy. It's also really quiet around town, has a very well-controlled ride, and is plenty practical enough for the odd family getaway. Indeed, if it weren't for the smaller boot, then this Corolla would have come quite close to winning this test. But as it is, the Octavia Estate continues its reign as the king of medium-sized estates. And it does so because it's got more interior space generally and a much larger boot. It's got a plusher interior too, plus a really economical engine. To save thousands of pounds off either car, go to whatcar.com. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and let us know in the comments below what you think of both these cars.